Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. Hosted by LynnDee Horn, a licensed counselor and owner of Narrow Gate Counseling Services. The Merge provides a biblical approach to mental health and navigating life's challenges. Join us as we explore practical, Christ-centered solutions for mental wellness, relationships, and spiritual growth.
Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. I'm your host, LynnDee Horn. And today I am here with some very special guests to talk about faith, mental health, and farming. Yep, I said farming. And so my guests today are Scott and Hillary Shelton, and they own Heal the Land Farm and Market in Elizabethtown, North Carolina. So I can't wait to jump into their journey and their wealth of knowledge today. And so Hillary and Scott, welcome to The Merge.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yes. So I want to jump right in. I don't want to waste any time so that we keep it rolling and can use all the time that we have. Tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and also how you came to faith.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off. I joined the Army in 2001, and I was raised in a split home where my mom was Catholic and my dad was more of a non-denominational. And so I was exposed to the church in different variations of that early on. But really, I think what it did more than anything was confuse me about who God was. And so when I joined the Army and life and death situations came across, like it kind of, I wouldn't say it rattled me in the sense that I got very fearful. I just kind of I think I developed that phrase YOLO in my heart way before it was ever like something to live by. So my life reflected just a mess. It was a mess. And Hillary and I got married and it was still a mess. And really I was just trying to do the right thing. I knew that Jesus was real. I knew that like everything I believed was true, but I started to wonder if I was not meant to be a part of that, because I felt wayward, lost, gone beyond and everything. And when I hit rock bottom, I just had an honest conversation with the Lord and said, I can see you're for people. I just don't know if you're for me. And in that moment, I had a very significant experience where someone spoke something that I feel like only God could possibly know. I didn't even know the man speaking. And it just really spoke identity over me. It spoke the Father's love over me. And it changed my life forever. I would say that's when I really became, shall I say, saved. And, like Jesus became my Lord. I gave my life to him. That's when my life changed, when I actually realized that he is for me.
Yeah.
He loves me. He's with me. And that's been the foundational moment in my life where I really knew who I was. And I'm still learning who I am in Christ, but that I was not beyond redemption.
I love that so much, Scott. Thank you for saying all that. I actually did a podcast with a friend of mine. Oh, I don't know. It hasn't been that long ago. It's been a few weeks, specifically on identity. You saying that word, because when we don't know who we are in Christ, whether it's been because we've believed lies of the enemy at some point, or whether it's our own thinking that's led us astray in certain areas, or just lack of understanding. Like you said, you kind of grew up in this place of confusion in some ways, even with faith. It really does attack our identity. And until we can accept that, understand that, believe that in Christ, that changes everything. It really, really does. So I love how you understanding your identity in him was really part of that story for you. That's powerful.
Yeah. And just, it's still like I think we'll say this a lot, it's still in process, but even in this entire farming journey, even just recently, I just felt the Holy Spirit ask me the question, if all you are is dearly loved by us, the Trinity, is that good enough for you? Will that be enough? Because my issue and my history and my past has always been, I'm doing everything to be something. So whether it's I'm packing lunches in the morning to be a good dad, and I'm walking with my wife holding her hand to be a good husband, and I'm, going to do the most difficult things in the Army to be a good soldier. And really the invitation was like, everything that you do should be out of this place of how much we're loved by God.
Yeah.
And so I'm still walking that out, and just kind of like, it changes your responses and how you deal with things and people, but
and all your motivation changes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, that's just kind of where I'm at now through all of this. Like, we'll get into our backstory, but like, I'm not a I am a first generation farmer. And so a lot of what we've been doing has been more difficult than maybe some other people's experiences.
Yeah, they're not walking into like a path already taken, like that's well worn. It's a pioneering of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's, thank you for sharing that. That in itself is just powerful. And it's this place of when we learn more of his identity, our identity in him, like you said, or that we're just fully loved, it comes from this place of knowing that we're a son and daughter, and also this place of we don't have to strive anymore. Like he already loves us. Like you were saying, like it takes so much pressure off. And you can almost rest in it. We have to learn to rest in it, but we can almost rest in it's like, wait a minute, like I don't have to strive in this. Like he already loves me and accepts me just like I am, but I can live from that instead of continuing to try to strive toward something, whatever that would be. Wow. I love it. So Hillary, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to faith.
So, I was raised in church. My mom was the type who, like, anytime the church was open, we were there. So, like, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday nights, we were always there at church. And I just knew he was real. I knew he loved me. But it wasn't until I grew up and then started going through the hard things that my faith was actually tested, that I was like, because it's like I was relying more so on my mom's faith. And my dad was, when I was growing up, he was an atheist. So there was a little bit of like division in our home in the sense where like, we would always go to church without him and he would stay home. And so once I got into my teen years, my parents split up. My dad moved out of the house and I became very rebellious because I was hurt, I was hurting. I felt kind of abandoned by my parents. And so I went off the deep end a little bit. And I had some encounters with God back then, just reminding me that he was real. But it wasn't until I actually got married to the person I was dating when I was a teenager, very young. And then by the time I was 22, we were already split up and divorcing. And I kind of hit my rock bottom at that point where I was like, oh my gosh, like I never wanted to get a divorce because that's what my parents went through. And I didn't want to repeat all the same mistakes, but I did. Yeah. And so I felt like, oh man, I'm too far gone. And whatever God's perfect plan was for my life, I ruined it. And I think at that point, I was basically like suicidal. And another thing, I joined the military. So when I was 18, I joined the Guard. And then by the time I was 19 or 20, I was on active duty. And so during that time when I was going through my divorce around age 22, I finally went back to church because all this time I was kind of just trying to live without God, even though I knew he was real. Mm-hmm. Finally went back to church because I was desperate. And I had a powerful encounter with God where I went up for prayer at the end of the service. It was one of those messages where the whole time the pastor was preaching, he was speaking directly to me.
Yeah, I've had those.
It was scary. And at the end, and it was a very small service. I think I went to like a Wednesday evening service at some random church. It was really small and there was an altar call and I did not want to go up. I felt nothing but fear. I was terrified. And somehow I was escorted up to the front. I don't even understand how I got there. I was like, oh my gosh, I do not want to come up here for prayer. I went and got prayer and had this just radical encounter where God's love touched me and like instantly delivered me from some things. Like after that, I was not suicidal. A lot of the fear that I had about my future was gone. I was able to, you know, forgive my, you know, soon to be ex-husband. And then it was literally just a couple months after that encounter that Scott and I started dating, and we met in the military because we were in the same unit. And like Scott said, you know, we both were broken when we got married. So it was not like this beautiful, perfect start, but God's been using us to make each other more Christ-like. We've been married 17 years now. After we got married, we had our first kid less than a year later. So this was like, we got married in March 2008. And then Ariana was born August 2009. So it was over a year later, but it seemed pretty quick that we got pregnant with her. Yeah. And then I got out of the military after she was born. Like right after our firstborn was born, we knew we were about to have to deploy for another long deployment. Like, was it going to be another 15-month deployment, or was it a 12-month deployment? 12 to 16. And we were like, oh my gosh, like we don't want other people to raise our kid. We want to raise our kid. So I got out. And then he stayed in for the full 20 years. I became a stay-at-home mom. And then we had 3 more kids. So we have 4 kids. And in 2021, he started his retirement process in 2021. And by the beginning of 2022, he was out of the military. And then at that point, that's a whole nother story of how we got to the point where we knew we were supposed to start farming after he retired. But that was when that big transition happened.
Awesome.
And we started farming in 2021 when we still lived in the suburbs. And then we bought our farm with land down here in Tar Heel in 2022.
I said Elizabethtown earlier, so you are in Tar Heel.
So we have our market is in Elizabethtown.
Gotcha.
But our farm is 10 minutes north in Tar Heel.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, okay. Wow. I love, you are so right that marriage helps you look holier. We're almost on year 18, and we were believers when we got married, but I'm just going to say there's some healing I needed that I didn't know I needed until I got married, and God was really able to use that to highlight that whole iron sharpens iron thing was definitely true for us. It still is on that journey. So yeah. I guess as a primary relationship, God uses it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of already mentioned. So start from the place where God kind of confirmed with you all that you needed to start farming, and then you started moving toward that. And then tell us how Heal the Land Farm was born. So give us that.
Yeah, definitely. So my military career was coming to an end, and I was kind of starting to prayerfully seek the Lord in what was next for us. I had no real plan, which is really why I never left the Army to begin with. I just never developed a good exit strategy, and that persisted all the way to the end. I was coming up on 20, and I had to leave no matter what, because I had broken my hip and I got medically retired essentially, and so I was looking at what's next, and then in the midst of COVID, which I think in some way everybody can say that time period changed their lives. For us, like one of the things that I noticed more than anything out of anything that would be noticeable was the food. And the shelves were starting to go bare, and I was really starting to see a problem that concerned me. And I thought, well, the best way to potentially serve or continue service would be to grow food. And I always wanted land, but I didn't ever have farming on my radar. It just kind of was something that was impressed upon me as a need in the midst of all these like perceived food shortages. Not sure if we'd ever recover. Like, who knew what was going to happen?
Yeah.
And so I started reading books. I would say that my unofficial mentor is a man named Joel Salatin, who writes a bunch. And so I just started picking up his books and watching videos and lectures by him and all of that stuff. And so I started to believe I could do it. I was going to say the one thing that Joel talks about early on that I remember was, don't wait until you have a bunch of land to then farm and figure out that it's not for you. Start where you're at, and he's just encouraging people. Like, if you have a half an acre or a quarter acre, figure out what you can do on that small piece of land that you own now, and put things into practice and see if you even like it. So, I guess, just to be a little bit concise, like, we already had egg layers, chickens in our backyard that was just very small flock and everything. But then once I got this message from Joel, like, go ahead and start, we started raising broiler chickens, which are also known as meat birds. And I built a little, what we call a chicken tractor that keeps them safe in for us, it was a 5x12 box, essentially, with chicken netting and all this stuff.
A mobile chicken coop.
Yeah, thank you. And we would pull them around our little quarter acre backyard that had a camper and a play set and a pool. We were living in suburbia, but I'm pulling these chickens through the backyard, and then we processed them ourselves and did all of that. And once we ate the first chicken, I think we were converted. And that's kind of how it all started. And it's totally evolved since then. I was like, I definitely want to do this. And so we started looking for land, and we bought the farm. And I guess as this interview goes on, we could get more into that. But that's how the farming started. And the reason the Heal the Land farm is called what it is based out of Romans 8:19, but you could really say like through 20, I suppose. But it says that in 8:19 it says, for the eagerly awaiting creation waits for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself also will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers in pains of childbirth together until now. And it just resonated with me that when we step into our identity as Christ followers, but not just Christ followers, but of children of God, the earth will respond. It needs us to do that. And when we do that, and the earth will respond and change. And so in us being allowed to be fathered by God, the earth will be redeemed also through our actions. And so anyways, by stewarding the land, we just believe in regenerative agriculture. Even though we're not perfect at it, we're doing, what we can. And we bought a farm that had weeds that were taller than me and had been just totally left void for several years. And just being here, putting animals on it, trying to put these practices into place as best we can. And, even just walking the land and praying and all this stuff, we're seeing it be recovered back to something beautiful. And it's just a confirmation that verse is true.
Yeah. And we're being healed through the process of like reconnecting with God's creation. Mm-hmm. And then, the byproduct of that is the land is being healed. Like, one of the things that we were hoping that we would do, because this farm, back in its glory days was gorgeous. And then the person who built it passed away in 2005. And then it was kind of like lying dormant and decaying. And we wanted to, heal it and see it revitalized and see it beautiful and, put nutrients back into the soil and also like raise animals and care for them better than what we've seen in the industrialized farming model here in America, where there's been a lot of abuse and a lot of disease and sickness. And, we don't realize how often we're buying meat from the store and that animal was actually like constantly stressed out or constantly depressed or had some sort of, sickness because of its environment. And we believe that by like taking good care of, the animals, being good stewards, like the Bible talks about, we're going to raise healthier food. And then when we're eating food that's healthy, we'll be healthier,
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that is a great segue into this part that I did mention, is that really, so the practical application of what that looks like is one of the core tenets is to allow the animal to express the design of the way it was created by God. And so rather than feeding cows grain and all this, we keep them, I'm not perfect at this, I have to say that, but we try to use electric fence to keep them together, and then they graze the land, and then we move them, and we're mimicking what they would naturally do in nature. And so it's through their being able to live the way they were created that they also, heal, and then the land heals, and so on and so forth. So by being stewards, we're just trying to do it the way God would have designed it, or God did design it, without us getting involved.
Yeah. And Hillary, I couldn't help with both of you just speaking about all of that. First of all, the verse that came to my mind was beauty for ashes. But the second thing was just everything you were just saying about how something was neglected and then you bought it and you wanted to restore it to its beauty, and you, like, just the words you just said. I had such a picture of God the Father doing that with us. Like, you're living out, like, whether it's, like you just said, like putting nutrients back in the soil. Like, God does that figuratively with us, or giving back our freedom, or the way that he intended us to live. Like, whether you're talking about the animals or whatever, like, he is putting back right his creation in some way. Like, everything you just, it gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what God the Father does with us. And so people might have been crazy or thought I was crazy when they read this title about faith, mental health, and farming. But I'm telling you, I've had my own personal experiences lately that have connected all of these things for me. And I was like, I need to talk to somebody that's doing this on a regular basis, because I've got my little tiny garden in the backyard that has, like you were saying, like, use what you have. And my daughter is really interested in it. She's 8. Well, almost 8. She'll be 8 in a couple months. And she was the one who really started getting interested in this, because at 5 years old, somebody gave her a little sunflower growing kit. And that planted, pun intended, that planted a seed in her to be very curious about all of that, when I didn't grow up with any of that. So it wasn't something I was naturally inclined to. So we started growing sunflowers, and it's just we just continued to add a little bit more. I live in a neighborhood, a subdivision. So it's small now, but I've just seen my own journey and how God has spoken to me through that. And it's helped my own like wellness, like mental wellness, physical wellness, because it's you all can say this way more than I can, but there's a lot of physical work involved in those things. But just all of that, like it's so connected. And I just love that when you were saying, I was like, yes, this is what God the Father does with us. So I'm going to take a quick break, because I think this is a good place to stop for a minute. So you are listening to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet, and we will be right back.
Narrow Gate Counseling, providing professional counseling where you are, at home, at work, or on the go. Our virtual counseling services are convenient, affordable, and accessible on any device. For a free consultation, call 888-9-NARROW. That's 888-962-7769. Connect and learn more now at narrowgatecounseling.com.
Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. Today we are talking about faith, mental health, and farming, or if you're just starting off, maybe it's gardening, but all of that together. And my guests today are Scott and Hillary Shelton, who are the owners of Hill to Land Farm. And we've already had a great conversation about how this journey began for them and a little bit about their past. So let's keep going with that. So you bought the farm when? So I know that during COVID, kind of this is where God was leading. But so when did you actually buy the farm?
2022, the
Okay.
fall of 2022.
And now you all also, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that was an extremely long process where like we found it in the beginning in February of 2022. And then it just took so long to buy it. And God had to perform so many miracles that we didn't close until July and then move in till like Labor Day 2022.
Wow. But he did work it out, which is awesome. So then the market came in, and that is what you all actually have in Elizabethtown. So tell me a little bit about the market.
Well, I'll start by saying that beginning of last year, so January 2024, I was praying. You know, a lot of us at the beginning of the new year pray and ask God for direction and vision.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the first week of the year, and I was like, okay, God, you know, we believe that we're down here and we're farming and we're doing what you've called us to do. And we also believe that he wants us to do it as a business, you know, like a source of income for our family. And we were definitely kind of stumped. We were at that point where, okay, we're learning how to take care of the animals. We've grown a lot of the different parts of our farm. And I was like, how do we make money? And I had a dream that very week in the night. So this was not like just an idea. Like I was sleeping and had a dream, a very vivid dream about our market. And I knew that God gave it to me because it was just such a supernatural, vivid dream. And I woke up just so excited, so inspired. And I told Scott, I was like, we're supposed to open a farm market and we're supposed to have this and that. And it's going to be, you know, a blessing to the community. And I was just so excited to find the place because in my dream, I was touring the future location as if I was, you know, getting ready to like lease it. And by April, we found our building and then we opened up last August. So it was very quick, but it's like when I know that something's from God, I go for it. And Scott's the same way. Like we're not the type of people who ease into things. We just like jump headfirst into the deep end. And so much so that like God will intentionally wait to tell us things until he actually wants us to, because we're just so quick to go for it. And that can be really painful too, because we often will just go for things without much thought about, you know, how we're going to maintain it and the second and third order effects. We're just like, okay, God, you say jump, how high?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but he opened all the doors and he brought the provisions. And I mean, we genuinely didn't have the resources or the finances to do it. And he just supernaturally provided because I believe it was his dream and his desire for the community to have a store like this. And after we received a lot of confirmation, you know, people who would come and shop and say, hey, we're so thankful that you opened this store in our community. We've been praying for a store like this. A lot of people that are now regular every week customers, you know, just express that they're thankful to not have to drive all the way to Fayetteville or all the way to Wilmington to get to the type of products that we carry. So it's been a blessing, and it's also been like this massive life change and learning curve because it's very time consuming running the market.
Yeah.
And we have 2 kids that we homeschool and 2 kids that go to a charter school locally. So we're still in that midst of like raising young kids.
Yeah, same here. I homeschool both of them. I have 2, and I homeschool both of them as well. So there's a lot. You navigate. It's beautiful because it gives you some flexibility in some ways, but you're just navigating a lot of hats when you're running a business and all the things that you all have talked about. So I can see how that can be hectic sometimes, to say the least.
Exactly.
So in all of this, and even the market and dreams and just praying and all of that, and you've talked a little bit about this already, but if you were just to highlight maybe something that God has shown you through the farm and your journey? Like, what would that be? Like a highlight there?
Yeah. So for me personally, it would be that he is my provider. I had a constant paycheck for 20 straight years that I never really had to worry about where money was coming from. It developed a false sense of comfort and stability that I was the provider. And I think, in large part, that's what the American dream kind of institutes in families, is the man provides for the family. But moving here, my plan as the provider was that I would retire, get a job. This would be something that we grow slowly, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately that job never came. We really just had to go through this process probably on my account. But there was times where money would be so tight that we would have homemade butter, fresh made bread that Hillary made, and honey and fresh milk from a cow that we milked that morning for dinner. And it's such an impactful memory to me that we're sitting around the bar in our kitchen and everyone was laughing and there was so much joy present in that moment. And that's when I felt just the Lord speak to me, like, everything's going to be okay. And, not to be overly transparent, but in that process, I thought, because I'm getting my job at some point or whatever, I'm just going to use this credit card for a little bit until we get the job and we can, move forward and do all these things. But again, in all of that, I was like, gosh, Lord, why am I not getting a job? Why am I not, I'm doing a psalm thing where I'm like, I don't even get it. I don't know what's going on. Where are you in all of this? And I heard in my spirit, I can't be your provider if you're busy being your provider. And I knew right then that I needed to pay off the credit card and just trust him. And would you believe that within a week, a bunch of money that we knew was just out there that we could get at some point, but we didn't know when, it could have been 10 years from now, came in, and we even got a random check that we don't know who it came from that blessed us tremendously. And so he just proved in that obedience. He's like, now I can do what I want to do. And I'm not saying that we get random checks all the time. That was just a one-time thing, but it was exactly what I needed to know. No matter what, is providing for this family, not me.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a hard and beautiful lesson learned all at the same time, right? It's this place of yes, Lord, thank you that that's off me. And I know that you're a provider and I trust you now. And wow, that hurt to go through that and realize this the way that I had to. I've got my own personal story about that. So I'm really resonating with where you are, because I'm like, I remember that lesson. And I never want to go back there. So for me, I'm like, thank you, Lord, for teaching me that. But I don't ever want to repeat. I just never want to forget it. Never want to forget that provision comes from you. So what about you, Hillary? Is there anything that highlights for you, kind of like Scott was saying that about provision, that you could just draw out one thing that God's really shown you through the farm and y'all's journey?
Well, there's so many things. I guess I should have been this while he was talking. Well, for one, we started this conversation talking about identity. I think through being here, God's been really revealing to me who I actually am versus my idea of who I am. Because there are so many things, boxes I put myself in or labels I put on myself before we got here. And I always kind of viewed myself as a clean indoor person who did not like getting in the dirt, didn't like playing with animals, didn't like camping or hiking or any of that kind of stuff. That's kind of how I viewed myself. And I'm realizing, being forced to be in this environment where I'm touching animals, I'm getting chicken poo on me, I'm, having to play in the dirt and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, wow, I actually enjoy this. And one example is the fact, like growing up, I would always have reactions to cats. And I remember, visiting my Aunt Verna's farm and holding her kittens, and I would always have like horrible, severe allergic reactions. And I was like, well, I hate cats. So my whole life, I'd always tell people, yeah, I hate cats. If I went to someone's house with a cat, I wouldn't stay for very long. And then throughout the owning chickens journey, we ended up having like rodents who were trying to steal our chicken feed. Scott convinced us, hey, we need cats for rodent control. Every good farm has cats. So
yeah, that's true.
and we got some kittens this few years ago, and I fell in love with them. And of course, initially in the beginning, I was having allergies, but it didn't keep me from holding them and loving on them. And I turned into a cat lover. And would you believe, like, my allergies are way less severe now, and I can hold cats and pet cats. And it's like I've developed some sort of immunity, and it might've been an emotional thing too, or a spiritual thing. But, I'm just realizing like how many things that I'm good at that I never thought I could do. I never viewed myself as a good cook, or, it's just challenged me and brought things out of me. Oh, the big thing is sales. I had never worked in sales before. And starting the market, I didn't do it because I thought I'd be good at it. I just did it because that was the dream God gave me. And I had no clue how much I enjoy sales. And now that I'm working at the market, I get to sell stuff every day. I get to tell people about the products and why I believe they're good products, why I believe that they'll be a blessing to their bodies. And I just love talking to the customers, providing customer service. It's kind of like my happy place with God when I'm there at the market.
Yeah.
I had no clue that was inside of me. So I really am kind of like, at the same time, being healed and finding out who I really am in this place where I'm highly challenged.
And all of that came from, and not tooting your own horn, but just highlighting, you had a dream, you knew that it was from the Lord, and you all were obedient. And so just by your obedience and being like, all right, Lord, we're going to do it. Like, God has continued to reveal who he made you because of your obedience to that journey, right? You wouldn't know those things about you if you hadn't started.
So true.
I just love how those things work into, and it's like, if we'll just step out and we'll just be obedient, we don't know what God has for us on the other side of that. Maybe, like you said, things that you didn't expect. Like, I didn't even know I liked sales, and I really love it. So it's like, wow, we get to explore these places that God created in there that we just never had the opportunity to express or know. So,
yeah, and I just would love to say that when Hillary came to me with the idea of the store, I was pretty much against it, dare I say adamantly. I just didn't see how it fit into the narrative of what we were doing at the time. But I trust her being able to hear from the Lord and seek him in prayer. And she said, I believe this is the right thing. I just want to say, like, how beautiful it's been to watch her. Something that I know for a fact she didn't have a grid that this is something she ever wanted to do, and how well she's done at it. Like, I mean, to me, it's just like, I don't know. It's like a humbling thing because she's, it's hard to explain, but it's like he's breathing life into her through this thing that she never had a dream for. And I think we say like we had this dream, but like we didn't sit on these dreams forever. It's like God planted these things in our hearts as like something that needed to be done. It's almost like he was just looking for the willing participant.
Yeah.
And he found that in us. And that's not to toot our own horn. He just knows that we're crazy enough to not care what anybody thinks about us and to go and do it. And if it, and it's not always perfect. Like we have fear, we get scared, we mess it up from time to time, but like we just try to put one foot in front of the other. And with the store, Hillary's done that, and it's beautiful because we didn't know it would become a ministry, but it for sure has. And that's like that is her ministry, and it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you for saying all of that, Scott. That's great. So we have about 5 minutes before we need to take another break. So I kind of want to a little bit merge a couple of questions here. So, like, how has your faith really influenced? You've talked about this a little bit already, just because of wanting to bring it all back to life. But how does your faith influence the way that you farm, care for the land, care for the animals, and then also, like, what kind of spiritual lessons, like in the rhythms of farming, have you been able to see?
Yeah, so I'm with the animals quite a bit more, and I'll tell you that well, I'm not gonna be able to remember every last one in this moment, but like I've had more good sermons preached to me out there with the animals where like I'm doing something and the scripture comes to life where it's like, this is what he meant by that. And that happens so often, but I'll just tell a story. And this is probably, I'll just tell it and people can hear it for what it is. But we had a cow, a heifer. So if nobody knows, a heifer is just a female cow that hasn't had a calf yet. And she wasn't terribly young. She probably weighed about 900 pounds. She went lame. She wasn't walking. And I went out and I started treating her and trying to figure out what's going on. And she had flies all over. She looked like she was going to die. But we fought for her, started figuring out how I could get her off the ground and all of these things and just like try to get life back in her, get food in her, get water in her, all of the things that she would need. And in that process, life did come back to her. The flies left, her spirit and willingness to live came back, but it took me with a tractor and trying to just getting her off the ground and helping her walk. And I was like, man, the normal, I won't say normal farmers, because I don't want to speak on behalf of all farmers, but like the tendency is to say, well, this is more problem than it's worth. We're just going to have to put her down. And I might have fallen subject to that, but Hillary's like, hey, she might come back. Let's fight for her. And so, I just felt like, okay, not really thinking through all of this at the time, but I was like, I'm going to fight for her for 3 days. Like she's got to bounce back in 3 days.
Well, you were praying and you felt like Holy Spirit told you to give her 3 days.
Yeah, that's true. And so I did that, but she still had the willingness to live. And now for 3 days, I'd go out there in the middle of the night and check on her a couple times a night and roll her up on her belly where she'd had roll over on her side and just different things. It was very hard.
You literally did physical therapy with her. Like he would have to stand her up and it was her back legs that weren't working, but her front legs were. Like she might've had some nerve damage. And he literally was helping her 1 foot at a time walk around and graze because she was so motivated to eat and she had a will to live, but her back legs just weren't working. So it was literally 3 days of you in the field with her doing physical therapy and like picking up her like 100-pound legs or maybe heavier to help her get forward.
I got it down where I could do it by myself for a couple of days, but on the last day I needed help. And so one of my friends came out and he had one side and I had the other. And that was kind of the day where I was like, okay, well, so we ended up putting her down and processing her and filling our freezer with her, which was an experience because I've done deer. I've never done a larger animal.
We need to give some context there. We didn't just go from like helping her for 3 days to putting her down. Like her feeling never came back. Basically, like her back legs remained non-functional.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No way that she was going to be able to walk and survive. So like we were hoping after 3 days that maybe some feeling would come back or something would heal. But it was like by the third day that that was a very hard, tear-filled decision that we had to make. But we knew and we had peace that we had followed through on what God told us to do to give her a chance.
Yeah.
And I'll just tie up the loose ends here is like, I know it sounds crazy, but in all of that, when she was packaged up and in the freezer and I was asking the Lord, like, why did you have me go through all of that to just have to end up putting her down anyways? And I just felt so strongly in my spirit, the Lord saying, this is how we undo what's been done. Like it's seed time and harvest. You planted a seed. And so while this one didn't turn around, it put into practice a new way of doing this, to where in the long run we'll start seeing the fruit and the evidence of not giving up.
Wow. I love that. So in something that you all could have perceived as a failure after all of that work, it still didn't end up there. God is saying, like, that's part of it. Like you had to go through this moment for that seed to be planted so that in the future things can be different. I love that.
I don't know how, like, we still experience loss. I think the important thing is to not take it for granted. And to fight for every life as best we can. That is kind of one of our tenets. Like, we're not going to give up. So yeah.
And we want to value, the life of every animal, even the ones that, like, we literally raise them for the purpose of feeding people. We know that someday they're gonna die, because they're gonna become meat and nourishment for others. But it's like, we don't want to take that life for granted. Whereas, like, when we weren't raising animals and we were just buying our meat at the store, I never thought twice about the animal that sacrificed its life so I could eat. And now when we are seeing the animals, we're looking them in the eye, we're petting them, it really makes you appreciate the sacrifice that happens every time an animal has to die so that we can eat. And I believe there's something deeply spiritual about that. I think God never wanted us to be disconnected from that process.
Yeah, because the more we understand about sacrifice, the more we understand about our Savior, the more we understand about being a Christian and doing that and suffering. I mean, there's so much that can be tied to that, just sitting here thinking about that whole process. So yeah, I believe you. I believe there wasn't supposed to be that disconnect too. That's powerful. So we're going to take a break at this point. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about, like, some healthier living things, maybe some organic food connections here to kind of wrap us all up. So you are listening to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet, and we will be right back.
Narrow Gate Counseling, providing professional counseling where you are. At home, at work, or on the go. Our virtual counseling services are convenient, affordable, and accessible on any device. For a free consultation, call 888-9-NARROW. That's 888-962-7769. Connect and learn more now at narrowgatecounseling.com.
Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. I have been talking to Scott and Hillary Shelton about Heal the Land Farm and how faith and mental health and farming is connected. And so we are going to be wrapping up a little bit here, talking about maybe some practical steps for each of us maybe in our own lives. So Scott and Hillary, how do you think that farming maybe this way and having, like you said, animals that are being allowed to do what they're created to do, like, how is that really helping maybe in our healthier living and just improved mental health? Because the more quality that we put in, the more quality that we're going to experience. So speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question. I'm going to take an animal, just because you can really apply this across all of the meat industry. But if we just talk cows for a minute, cows get shuffled all over the nation, thousands of miles at different phases of their life. They get crammed into trailers, they get moved to feedlots, packed in to muddy fields that smell terrible if you drive by them, and they're just pushed corn and grain, not just corn, but grain, for the last few weeks of their life, until they're then hauled off across the country the other direction to the processing facility. And if you account for all of that, like the confinement, the transportation, all these different things, it equates to stress. It equates to health issues and things of this nature. And so if we just focus on the idea of stress, I believe, and I think it's been scientifically proven, I can't like cite a source on this, but when that cortisol levels are super high in that beef, that's in the meat whenever it gets processed. And so you're eating stress. And so that's one thing. Another thing is the cow was never really meant to eat the levels of grain at all that they eat. And if you put a cow that goes to butcher, like a typical industry standard cow that goes to butcher next to a person of the equal body composition, you would see a massively obese person. And so we're eating obese animals with tons of fat in them that isn't necessary. And so like that all conveys into our bodies ultimately.
We are what we eat, right?
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
when you say we are what we eat, that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, or
no, closer to
it
the
could
truth.
be closer to the
That's
truth.
really,
Yeah.
And so that's across all spectrums. And then, yeah. So, and then also I just want to say like organic is a label that you really just have to pay for, and you're not getting, if you buy organic, which I will say buying organic is, if that's the best option you have because you're in a big city and you can't get to a farm that you can buy stuff locally, great, do that. But understand that when you're buying organic, you're buying something that the government has approved as acceptable. So there's still sprays, there's still things with it. You can't validate what you're actually eating. Whereas if you know a farmer or you find a farm store and you can talk to them and all of these things and find out and see and go to a farm and smell and, just all the different things where it's like, okay, I know what I'm eating now. We don't have any labels for organic or anything like that because we don't want to pay for it. So we've coined a phrase. I should say Hillary's coined a phrase that may have actually come from my brother, I think, but beyond organic. And that just means that we aren't doing anything. We only, we don't do antibiotics or vaccinations or anything. Like, we're trying to stay as clean as possible. And then
avoid chemicals.
And then the last thing I'll say is it's only in the last couple hundred years that most of what you see in grocery stores now actually existed. And so going back to traditional eating, in the Western Aid Price Foundation is a great resource for that, where you're eating whole foods, not processed foods. And like that is fundamentally one of the best ways you could possibly live.
Like one ingredient foods.
Yeah.
I know I'm going along here, but I just want to say I love capitalism, but the consumer has to be educated. And the producer side of things, what capitalism does is it converts all waste into product or sales.
Profit, yeah.
And so we have to know that not everything being sold is good. And we have to educate ourselves on what is good and put our money to things that are important to us. And so, we've been told that that fats like tallow and lard are bad and that you need to have seed oils, but now science is proving seed oils are actually very healthy, and that we should have been eating eggs and bacon and fats and all this stuff. So, like that's part of what we learned out of COVID, and one of the things that like in our evolution of our why is like going back to a more traditional lifestyle and more traditional eating.
And also, just really quickly, I wanted to add that, like, I believe right now, on social media especially, there's so much good information and truth being shared about homesteading, farming, food. There's like this awakening that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that God is the one who has initiated this like reformation. And it's almost like a food and farming revival. And there's so many people that come into my market all the time now that like are learning and know all these things. Like I'm not having to educate them. They're excited to talk about it because they've already learned all about seed oils or about, good fats. And so I'm excited because it's not like there's just one or two of us that are on this journey of learning about this. It's actually becoming like trendy, but I do believe it's because God is behind it. He's the one that's like waking people up because he wants us to be healed. He wants us to be healthy, and he wants us to be connected to his creation. And so I don't think it's just for like a few. I think everybody can make like small changes to be that difference and to bring reformation to our food system, especially here in America.
Absolutely. And I think it even goes back to something that Scott said kind of early on in the podcast. It's like, we can do something. Like you started with the chickens in your backyard, like whatever, instead of saying, well, I can't jump on this health food bandwagon or whatever that looks like because I could only do this step. And it's like, no, go ahead and start that step. You have no idea what the momentum or the effects are going to be if you'll just continue to kind of pursue what you know or what you can instead of not, doing that at all. And I mean, taking care of our body is good stewardship of the temple that God gave us. So the more that we can be educated, the more that we can pursue that healthy living in the products that we consume. It all kind of comes full circle for me when we really talk about all of this. So we've only got a couple minutes left. I want you all just to give the listeners just a little overview of the things that they can get from Heal the Land Farm. I mean, we've talked a little bit about animals, we've talked about a market, and we're going to have links to their website and their social medias and all of that stuff in the show notes of this podcast today. But also just some article links to why farming and things like that are good specifically for your mental health and the spiritual connection of those things. So we'll have all of that in the show notes. But with the last couple of minutes we have, like, tout what you do. Tell us what all you have for us.
So the staple products that we sell are the products that we raise on Heal the Land Farm, which we are a livestock farm. So we sell grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We sell pasture-raised poultry. We sell our free-range eggs, and our chickens get to run all around free at our farm. And you'll never see a clean driveway or clean patio here because of the chickens. We also sell raw milk for pet consumption only from our little micro dairy. We got dairy cows because we wanted raw milk for our family, and due to North Carolina legislation, we can only sell it for pet consumption. And it's available on a first come, first served basis during our market hours. And then we've also gotten connected to other local small farms and local producers and local home bakeries. So we sell like fermented sourdough bread that only has 3 ingredients. And that's one of our staple products that people love to come and get every week. We sell some local, baked goods that have really simple ingredients. We also sell pasture-raised pork from a farm in White Oak. I'm missing some staple products. We also sell dairy products from Homestead Creamery, which is a creamery in Virginia, who has A2 cows. So a lot of people find that the milk is easier to digest. It's like a better quality, lightly pasteurized milk.
Okay.
And then with spring here, we're getting ready to sell local produce. So the goal is just to get connected to other local producers in our area who are doing things naturally and not using chemicals.
So that's wonderful. I can't wait to come visit myself. I'm definitely going to do that and make that trip. So thank you so much, Scott and Hillary, for your time today. Just the nuggets that you've shared about your story are so rich. So I just believe that so many people are going to be able to hear this and be encouraged in some way or understand more about God through your story. So thank you so much. I want to leave you all and our listeners, because I do this every week, but I just love this verse. I want to leave you all with this blessing today and our listeners from Numbers 6:24-26. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord show you his favor and give you peace. You have been listening to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to The Merge, hosted by LynnDee Horn. You can always find a copy and catch up on past episodes. Just subscribe to The Merge anywhere you listen to podcasts.